Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the very first episode of WWE Talk With Me. On the show I'll be discussing the events of each week on Raw, SmackDown, 205 Live, NXT, NXT UK, and pay-per-views. Let's get to it. NXT UK Takeover Cardiff was a fantastic pay-per-view, but I want to start out by saying I don't watch UK Weekly. After this I'm going to start, but I don't know many of these wrestlers, and so if there's anything in this review that sounds off, I'm sorry, but I never realized the UK was this good. The first match of the night was Noam Dar versus Travis Banks. Now, if I really cared about these guys and knew their stories, this would have been a lot cooler. But either way, this match was still pretty good. Not bad at all. Now, nothing really stood out to me here as I watched the match over again, but Noam Dar picked up the win. We then got what was easily one of Cesaro's best matches as he faced Ilja Dragunov. Such a fantastic match. Oh my god, the UK crowd was so lively during this match. Cesaro with the 41 seconds of a big swing. It was absolutely crazy. Cesaro obviously taking the win. He then got back in the ring and made it seem as though he was going to attack Dragunov, only to shake his hand in the end and give him a big hug. Even the Swiss Cyborg has feelings. Next, there was a fantastic tag team triple threat match between the champions Zach Gibson and James Drake versus Flash Morgan Webster and Mark Andrews and Mark Coffey and Wolfgang. This match was absolutely amazing. Webster and Andrews were crazy during this match. It seemed as though they were going to go all night, but instead, Webster and Andrews became the new tag team champions. Then there was one of the greatest last man standing matches I've ever seen. Cue everyone outraging in the comics because I haven't seen many last man standing matches. Between Joe Coffey and Dave Mastiff, they made their way all around the arena using chairs, chains, pool cues, and so many other weapons of destruction. In the end, Joe Coffey was the last man standing. There was then a pretty dull match for the Women's Championship, which I think was the worst match of the night. While it was pretty good, it just didn't live up to the others, especially being after the last man standing match and right before the NXT Championship match. Kaylee Ray stood victorious over Toni Storm as the new UK Women's Champion. We then had the match I was anticipating the most, an absolute glorious, phenomenal finale to a great night, the NXT UK Championship match. Walter versus Tyler Bate. I knew Walter was good. I've watched him before. I've watched Imperium. They're awesome. Tyler Bate, I've heard he's pretty good. I'm pretty sure he was in the crowd at SummerSlam. Well, let me go check real quick. So, I'm not really sure. I didn't find anything, and I'm not watching SummerSlam for a 7th time. Anyways, this match was absolutely amazing. Every time I thought it was over, these two just kept going and going. The power of Tyler Bate as he lifted Walter up several times, the technicalities of his performance, the groundbreaking strength of Walter as he carelessly threw Bate around the ring. While Tyler Bate's performance was amazing, in the end, Walter stood tall. After Walter returned backstage, Bate remained in the ring where his brothers Pete Dunne and Trent Seven came to his aid as they shared a moment in the ring. Now, I don't know enough about NXT UK yet to give it an official rating, so I'm going to give it the unofficial rating of pay-per-view of 4 out of 5. This week's Raw was very exciting, but at the same point had some lows. It started out with a contract signing between Seth Rollins and Braun Strowman. Michael Cole moderated, I'm using finger quotes here, the signing. He then went on to say some very scripted dialogue in which Seth and Braun discussed exactly what we've all been thinking and hearing about for the past several weeks. During the conversation, that beautiful music that I love so much hit, and out came the OC. Styles gave some of the greatest dialogue I think we've seen this year, and brought up what would be a good point, but not to WWE standards. He claimed that he should have been the first in line for a Universal Championship opportunity because he is the United States Champion. He also mentioned how Gallows and Anderson, the former Raw Tag Team Champions, who Seth and Braun beat already, should be the ones going to Clash of Champions. A fight then broke out, and after commercial break, we learned that the match was made official. It was unclear whether this was for the opportunity to Clash Champions, but either way, the OC lost. This was quite disappointing because Gallows and Anderson had such a good push for 3 weeks, but then, after losing the belts, tag team turmoil, and now this, they seem to be losing their touch. Obviously, this is due to their contract re-signing with WWE, but it would have been nice to see them continue on to Clash of Champions. I'm unsure whether or not AJ Styles still has a chance of going, but that would be awesome in my opinion, to see a triple threat between Braun Strowman, Seth Rollins, and AJ Styles. Winner takes all. And now I'm just going to say it because we're all thinking of it. Can Seth please just say he'll be the Monster Slayer so he might get a cool shirt after? I don't know what I'd do if Seth and AJ both lost their titles in one night. I might cry. After AJ Styles played the number games and another fight broke out, Rude and Ziggler then arrived and all 5 men beat up Strowman. The OC then went on to beat up Cedric Alexander because, well, I don't know why. We were never given a true explanation other than he was in their way. Rude and Ziggler then had a match against Ryder and Hawkins for whatever reason, obviously for some momentum going into Clash of Champions, but out of all the tag teams available to show how good of a team they are together, let's pick the guys who have one match every 2 months and chase the 24/7 belt around. Anyway, Rude and Ziggler obviously won pretty easily. Lacey Evans and Natalya had a match because Lacey Evans is relevant again after being on the main event. It was a pretty good match. In all honesty, I was waiting for Banks to interrupt or something, but she didn't. Lacey Evans picked up the win with the women's right and stood tall. Becky Lynch then cut an in-ring promo, which I thought was pretty good. The Boss then came out to argue with her a bit, blah, 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 back and forth, and their match at Clash Champions was made official. We then had our first quarterfinal match in the King of the Ring tournament in the form of Cedric Alexander versus Baron Corbin, or should I say, King Corbin. Baron Corbin is one of my picks for King of the Ring. After everything he's done this year, I think this might be the right time for him to pick up a big win. But remember, we can't have Corbin really win, so we'll injure Cedric and blame it on that. We then watched the raid continue as 2 idiots got beaten up by the Viking Raiders. I don't see what they're going to do with this. The Viking Raiders have become an unstoppable force. Who's going to beat them? Rude and Ziggler? Okay. The New Day certainly aren't. I think that's just another reason why OC should be the champs again, because we never got a true ending to the fight between these two teams. We then had our next quarterfinal matchup in the King of the Ring tournament with Samoa Joe taking on Ricochet. I thought this was a pretty good match. It went on for quite a while before both men fell off the top rope and the ref counted to 3. There was a bit of confusion when everyone realized that both men's shoulders were on the ground. We later found out that the ref had made an official decision to send them both to the semifinals in a triple threat match against Corbin. Now my prediction is 1 of 2. Samoa Joe or Ricochet will hit their finisher on the other, and Corbin will swoop in for the cover, because remember, can't really have Corbin win. Or Ricochet will progress to the semifinals. We then came back from a commercial break for my favorite show, the Firefly Funhouse, where we found out that a match is practically official. The Fiend will be taking on either Seth Rollins, Braun Strowman, or AJ Styles for the Universal Championship. We then got some more of that creepiness that I love from these promos, and that was it. We then got a backstage interview with Rey Mysterio where he revealed he will be continuing his wrestling career and has yet to retire. We then had the odd matchup of The Miz and Cesaro. At first I was like, The Fiend might come out, right? But then I realized that wouldn't lead to anything for Cesaro or The Miz. And he already had the Firefly Funhouse promo for Hell in a Cell. The match was pretty good, but after The Miz hit the scroll-crushing finale, he picked up the win, which was quite a shame because Cesaro just had that absolutely amazing match in Cardiff and just lost all that momentum. We then had the match of Becky Lynch and Bayley versus Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. The match was pretty good, nothing too special until the end. Midway through the match, Sasha Banks showed up. Wow, who was expecting that? Then, with a few minutes left before the end of the show, she attacks Becky. She then gets a chair and begins to beat down on her with that. Bayley then rips the chair from her friend's hand and looks at her, then looks at Becky, then at the chair. She then grabs the chair with both hands and began hitting Becky with it. Bayley turns heel. The hugger turns heel. Oh my god, this could lead to so much. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross still don't have an opponent, with the only 2 Raws and SmackDowns left before Clash of Champions. Bayley turns heel! They could lead to a Bayley-Becky feud, and we could see the man as Becky 2 belts once again. Oh my god. This was a very exciting Raw that could lead to a lot, but there were a few things that bothered me a little, so I think this Raw is going to get a 7 out of 10. SmackDown Live was quite eventful this week, with a lot to talk about. It started up with a follow-up to Monday night's main event where Bayley turned heel. She cut an in-ring promo where she tried to defend herself, saying that she was keeping her loyalty to her best friend and that the WWE Universe should appreciate her for teaching their kids good morals. She then continued to talk about her match at Clash of Champions where the Queen herself, Charlotte Flair, arrived to defend herself. Sasha Banks then came in and Charlotte made her attack on Bayley. Sasha and Bayley then proceeded to brutalize the Queen inside the ring. Before we learned of Bayley's loyalty to Sasha, I had previously believed Charlotte was going to take Bayley's title and become a 10-time champion. But after the attack on Charlotte, it leads me to believe that Sasha will be at ringside during the match and be the deciding factor. The same may be said for Sasha's match with Becky Lynch. Could Bayley and Sasha rule the women's division after Clash of Champions? The King of the Ring quarterfinals proceeded with Ali versus Elias. The match was absolutely stunning with some fantastic performances. Last week these two matches were announced and I thought to myself, Ali's gonna win easily, right? No, instead Elias took the win and continued to the semifinals. We then had a match I thought was quite stupid. Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross versus Fire and Desire. Although Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross already defended their titles successfully against this team, the writers decided out of all the women's tag teams it should be Fire and Desire to go to Clash of Champions. Although it hasn't been confirmed yet, we all know this is the route they're going to take, especially since Fire and Desire picked up the win. Randy Orton then came out and cut his own promo, demanding that Kofi and him have their match now on SmackDown Live. Kofi's music hit, and it took a moment for the champion to arrive. We then watched the Revival beat up our WWE champion and dragged him to the ring where FTRKO beat down Kofi. The quarterfinals of the King of the Ring tournament came to a conclusion as Chad Gable took on Andrade. At the beginning of this match, I was sure after Andrade's multiple-week push, he would go to the finals. For God's sake, the man beat up Rey Mysterio. But no, we needed a follow-up to a feud that started a couple weeks ago when Elias called Gable short. None of that can dispute how fantastic this match was, though. Although Zelina Vega interrupted as usual, the match was absolutely fantastic for both Gable and Andrade, with Gable taking the win. Earlier in the night, Aleister Black revealed that he wasn't going to wait anymore for anybody to knock on his door, and that he was going to wait in the ring until an opponent arrived. After Black came out, we cut to a commercial. Upon return, we learned that this challenger was Shelton Benjamin. This week, the stupid matchups have really been getting on my nerves. Of course, Aleister Black killed Shelton Benjamin and took another win. After a lot of backstage chaos, Drake Maverick was pinned by Bo Dallas of the B Team, losing the 24/7 championship. Drake then took the championship back before making his way to the ring, where R-Truth waited next to the King of the Ring throne with the lampshade over his head, and our beloved 24/7 champ gained his belt once more. Shinsuke Nakamura's intro hit, and out came the Rockstar and his new manager, Sami Zayn. Shinsuke then proceeded to beat down a nobody, while Sami Zayn took over the commentary. Kinshasa! I'm really liking Sami Zayn's commentary. Daniel Bryan then storms his way down to the ring, where he once again demands Roman Reigns to apologize to him. Roman then makes his way out, where Eric Rowan blindsides him and begins to attack both Reigns and Bryan. He then grabs a mic and does some of the best talking I think we've ever heard from Roman. He claims that he doesn't need anyone. He is no longer going to be told what to do. During this entire segment, I was honestly waiting for Luke Harper to arrive, but sadly the Bludgeon Brothers reunion will have to wait. Earlier in the night, it was confirmed that Roman and Rowan will be having a match at Clash of Champions. Will Bryan help Roman to turn the tide of the match? So many unanswered questions after this SmackDown Live. SmackDown Live was pretty good and progressed a lot of stories with two excellent King of the Ring matches and a main event that really got me hooked on the Roman story once more. This SmackDown Live has earned itself an 8 out of 10. This week's 205 Live was a typical 205 show. Matches no one really cares about and some more stuff. The show began with a match between Tony Nese and Mike Kanellis, as previously Kanellis commented on Nese's losing streak. At the beginning of the match I thought to myself, of course Tony Nese is going to win and turn himself around. But then after a pretty good match, Kanellis picked up the win and pleased his wife Maria. The Singh brothers then cut a promo, and can I just say how much I don't like these guys? They then introduced the matchup of Akira Tozawa and Brian Kendrick versus the two nobodies that the Viking Raiders killed on Raw. I'll give them some respect for getting beat up by saying their names, Brandon Scott and Tyler Hastings, even though you don't care. You really know they don't mean anything when their intros during a commercial break on the network. Obviously, Tozawa and Kendrick took a predictable win. Brian then goes on to reveal that he and Tozawa have a match next week at the Garden against Jack Gallagher and a partner of his choosing. After a commercial break, Oni Lorcan poses for a backstage interview when he finds a disgruntled Tony Nese enraged by his loss. Lorcan goes to help Nese when the premier athlete begins to attack him. This means that Tony Nese has now become an official heel. To close off the show, we end with an interesting main event. Earlier in the day, Lince Dorado claimed that he isn't given enough opportunities in 205 Live. Drake Maverick then proceeds to set him up with a match against Humberto Carrillo. If Dorado wins, he is added to the match at Clash of Champions for the Cruiserweight title. It was a pretty average match for the most part, nothing stood out too much, but in the end, Lince Dorado stood tall, victorious. At least for a moment. Drew Gulak then came out to beat up Dorado. Humberto then went to help Lince before Tony Nese arrived to attack him. Gulak and Nese exchange a look before proceeding to beat down Gulak's challengers. Even for a 205 show, this was pretty dull and didn't have any breathtaking action. I give this 205 Live a 6 out of 10. NXT this week was pretty great, with two excellent matches and a lot of story progression. The show kicked off with the return of the Fashion Bleeps. Breezango faced off against Chase Parker and Matt Martell, a team I've never heard of before that night. Obviously, Breezango won the match with a strong display of tag team partnership. We then got a bit of an awkward transition to backstage cameras, where we got a brief shot of Io Shirai beating down Candice LeRae with a kendo stick. The Velveteen Dream then came out for a match scheduled last week against Kona Reeves. My god, are the nobody matches big this week. The match was pretty good and didn't take too long for Velveteen to pick up the win, but some of the action was pretty fantastic. The better half of this segment began when Roderick Strong cut a promo on the screen as Velveteen stood in the ring. At first, it seemed as though Strong had been standing next to the campfire of sorts, but then after this camera zoomed out, it was revealed that Strong had set fire to Velveteen's prize couch, thus earning himself a solo match in 2 weeks for the North American Championship. My god, I hope he wins, and the undisputed prophecy is complete. Tainara then had a match against Bianca Belair, and can I just mention how much I hate Bianca Belair? But of course, NXT tends to hate me as well, so Bianca Belair won in a pretty unimpressive match. We then had our main event, which just blew me away and had me on the edge of my seat. I would have lost it if Jordan Myles had taken Adam Cole Bebe's title. I have to be honest, I don't really like Jordan Myles much, and I believe that Cameron Grimes should have won the tournament, but he is a pretty good performer, and this match showed just that. I was a little upset that Cole didn't hit the Panama Sunrise. Does it really matter? In the end, Cole retained the NXT Championship and stood victorious. This week's NXT was really good, and I think it set up for future events so nicely, so I think this show really deserves a 9 out of 10. First off, I'd like to say I was a little disappointed at how short this NXT UK show was, especially for my first time watching. I'd thought that all these shows were this short, but upon inspection, I found myself wrong. The show was pretty good, but I feel that some of the backstage stuff could have been a little less scripted. The show began with a matchup of Rhea Ripley and Piper Niven. Now, as I previously mentioned, I don't know much about NXT UK, but I do know that Rhea was once champion, and after this performance, I feel like if anyone were to beat Shayna Baszler, it would be this girl. A fantastic performance from both women, but in the end, after a strong Riptide from Ripley, Riptide from Ripley. Try saying that 10 times fast. Anyway, you get it. She took the win. Originally, the show's main event was scheduled to be Casey O'No versus Jack Gallagher, but after a backstage interview, it was revealed that Gallagher was not medically cleared to wrestle. When the time came, Ono entered the ring and waited for his opponent. Sid Scala then made his way to the ring, where we believed he would announce Ono's opponent, but he began to remove his upper clothing, and it was clear that now Scala would be Ono's opponent. This match was absolutely fantastic with so much action, and had me debating if Ono could truly beat the small man. In the end, Ono did prevail victorious, though. This show was pretty great, and as my first regularly scheduled NXT UK show, I have to say it was very, very impressive. Therefore, I'm going to award it a 4 out of 5. Next week, I'll begin giving NXT UK an official score. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up the first episode of WWE Talk With Me. I do hope you've all enjoyed yourselves. Go ahead and subscribe for weekly content, and feel free to drop a comment down below on this week's WWE events. Always remember, fight on.